Hello, thank you for watching my channel today. My name's Sarah and my channel is Your True Shelf, and I am coming to you today slightly poorly. I have a cold and my throat is kind of sore, not so sore now, it was sore for a couple of days and a bit scratchy, and I think normally when this happens I then go on to lose my voice, so I thought better to record now a little bit gross than to try and record when I can't talk at all. So I've got tea. It's like a bird and blend fruit tea. I just ordered some tea from them and they sent me some free samples, and I think this is like strawberry lemonade or something. It's really nice. So yes, so I'm going to make a TBR video today for my February TBR, and I don't usually do TBR videos because I normally have a rough plan in my head what I'm reading and do some sort of impulse reads off my shelves at the same time, but I have actually got plans for February, so I thought I would do a TBR. And the main things I have planned is my book group read, my buddy read with my friend Jo, which we do every month, and then I want to take part in Blackathon. So Blackathon is hosted by Jessie at Bow Ties and Books, and they have put together a really good challenge for Blackathon this year, which is an annual event which happens, and I want to take part. So I will link all of Jessie's content in the description box down below so that you can go and watch yourself, because they'll do a better job definitely than me of describing all of the different plans. But there are basically 3 different teams that you can choose from, and each team has 4 challenges, 4 prompts and a group read. And I'm not going to do the group read because I don't want to buy books specifically for that. I'm only going to read from my TBR. And the third team, I don't want to do the challenges just because I can't meet all the prompts with my books. And the first 2 teams I can. So I'm going to try and read 8 of the books on my TBR. And I'm also just going to read Black authors next month. That is the plan, with the exception of Dickens, because I'm still going along the schedule of my Dickens mega read along, which I mention every single video pretty much. So without further ado, I will tell you my plans. So my book group choice for the month of February is Black Cake by Charmaine Wilkerson, and this is a book which I have on Kindle, so I will insert a picture, and it is following 2 siblings in California after their mum has died, and their mum leaves them a black cake, a traditional black cake, which I think is a Caribbean recipe, and also a voice recording which tells her story, and a story of escape from her island where she was born, and about all sorts of things that have happened to her in her life which her children were unaware of. And I think they've now got sort of, I don't know if they've got like a mystery to solve, but they've probably got questions and things that they didn't know about happening. So that's our book club choice. And then my buddy read with Jo. So we have this massive classics project where we have got mostly classics, but also some modern classics and just authors that we wanted to read who are quite sort of canon type authors. And so we have this big spreadsheet and we take it in turns every month to choose what we're going to read together. And this month we've chosen to read Beloved by Toni Morrison. I'm really excited to read this because it's Oprah's favourite book, and I've read 2 Toni Morrison before, and I think that she would be a really good author to buddy read because her writing is so exquisite, and also because of the plots of her books, I think they'd be really good to like analyse together with someone else. So Beloved is about a woman who was born, Seth, she's called Seth, she was born into slavery, and I think she has an incredibly hard life, and she gives birth to a baby who dies and is never named, but they have a tomb, a little gravestone which just says Beloved on it. And she is sort of haunted by this baby and her life, and then when in years to come a teenage girl comes to her place where she lives and says that her name is Beloved, and it just said that secrets kind of explode. So it sounds like super heartbreaking, but also it's Toni Morrison. have to read it. So moving on to the actual challenges for the Blackathon. I'm just going to have one more sip of tea before I have to put this down. The first challenge is to read a book written by a trans black author. I had to check of the authors I have which identify as trans, because I didn't want to mislabel someone as trans if that's not what they identify as. But I have chosen, I'm just peeling off, I was going to peel off the sticker but it's not going to come off properly. I have chosen Pet by Akwaeke Emezi. So I've only read one of their books, which was Freshwater, which I really liked, and I think that other of their books have been kind of different from Freshwater. So Pet, this is a proof copy which I actually got in a secondhand bookshop, and I know you're not supposed to resell proofs, but obviously they did. This is, I will just read the blurb because I don't really feel like I can summarise this very well. So it says, there are no monsters anymore, or so the children in the city of Lucille are taught. With doting parents and a best friend named Redemption, Jam has grown up with this lesson all her life. When she meets Pet, a creature made of horns and colours and claws, she must reconsider what she's been told. Pet comes to hunt a monster, and the shadow of something evil lurks in Redemption's house. Jam must fight not only to protect her best friend, but also to uncover the truth and to answer the question, how do you save the world from monsters if no one will admit they exist? This is quite a short book, and actually most of the books on my TBR are quite short, so I'm hopeful that I'll be able to read all of them. The second prompt is to have a book with a black female protagonist who is loud or unafraid or confrontational. So I've chosen a book for this. It's a YA book called I'm Not Dying With You Tonight by Gilly, Segal and Kimberley Jones. So this is by two authors. One author is black and one author is white. And it's about two girls. One is black and one is white. And they are both at the same school, and they are watching a high school football game on a Friday night, and I think something happens, like a big event happens, which I think is racially motivated, and the city sort of goes into sort of this chaos as a result, and the girls have to try and get home, and I think that they have to rely on each other to try and get home, but they're kind of both unaware of each other's perspective, and so they, I think there would be like some really good sort of discussions in this book about race and about understanding of another person's race. And I thought that this, for me, just the title sounds like there's going to be like opinions, and I don't know if it's going to be confrontational, but I think there's going to be like divided opinions in the book and things like that. So I thought that this would be a good one for that. The third prompt is a book with impressive architecture or set largely in one building. So for this, I've chosen two options. One is a book which is set largely in a prison, and this is Punching the Air by Zoboi and Yusef Salaam. And Yusef Salaam, I don't know if both of them, I should have checked this before, but there one or both of these people are from the Exonerated Five. So there has been the documentary film like When They See Us, about the boys who were wrongly convicted of I'm not sure if it was like sexually assaulting or killing a white woman in a park, and they didn't have anything to do with it, and they were convicted for it. So this is basically about an art student called Amal Shahid, and he's an artist and a poet, and he is discriminated against in school. And then one day there's an altercation in a gentrifying neighbourhood, and it says that boys just being boys turns out to be true only when the boys are white, and he's convicted of a crime that he didn't commit and sent to prison. And this is a book which is set in verse, and I've read at least one book set in verse before, which I really liked, and I think two books. I read The Poet X, which was set in verse, and also a Sarah Crossan book called One, which was set in verse. So I really like both of those. So I know this is going to be like a really powerful book. And then the other one, which is largely set in a school, is this one, which is Full Disclosure by Camryn Garrett. So this is about a teenager who's living with HIV. She's called Simone, and she's moved schools, and nobody knows that she has HIV. And all of a sudden she gets into a relationship with another boy, and he obviously doesn't know, but there's conversations that need to be had. And then one day she finds a note in her locker which is basically threatening her, so I'm guessing someone's trying to out her as having HIV. And so I don't think I've ever read a book which is about a teenager dealing with being HIV positive before, so I think that this would be really interesting and really insightful, because it must be like incredibly hard. The fourth prompt is either a book with lavishly wealthy characters or one that explores class. I don't really like books with lots of like wealth in them, just because I don't like people kind of flashing the cash and all that sort of thing. It doesn't really interest me. So for this one I thought I'd do one that explores class, and this is another book I've got on my Kindle, which is called When No One Is Watching by Alyssa Cole. So this book is a thriller, and this, which I don't normally read, but I thought this one sounded really interesting. So I think it's set in New York, and it's about a neighbourhood which is becoming increasingly gentrified, and the people who have grown up there and live there are no longer able to afford to live there, and white people are basically like moving in and getting rid of all their like the shops that were there and gentrifying everything, and people are leaving. But then it's like asking like, are people leaving or are people disappearing? So I thought that one sounded like it's covering important issues as well as being kind of pacey and exciting at the same time. So they are the first 4 prompts, and then if I want to do the other team, then the other 4 prompts are as follows. So one is a charming protagonist who is a spiritual person or has fantastical abilities. So for this one I picked a book that I've had for at least a year, which I'm really keen to read, and I believe, even though it doesn't really sound like it's got magical realism, on the synopsis it's I feel like the reviews I've read that it's got magical realism, and this is The Stars and the Blackness Between Them by Juanada Petrus. This was also Bookish Mama Bloom's favourite book of the year last year, and she said to me, Sarah, you will really like this book. I believe Sean had read it from past story time as well and really liked it, and I think that's why I bought it in the first place. So this is following 2 girls. One has come from Trinidad, and she is Audrey, and she has basically been sent to America to live with her family because she was caught with another girl, and so she's been banished from the family home and sent to live in America with her father. She's going to live with her father. Then we have Mabel, who is living in Minneapolis in America, and she has a dinner guest who comes round, and the dinner guest turns out to be Audrey, and I believe that they form a friendship and a relationship together, and I think that this is going to be like a joyful book. The next one is with a mixed race protagonist or an immigrant protagonist, and for this one I have chosen, I think the protagonist is mixed race for this book. I've chosen Sankofa by Chibundu Onuzo, and this is a book about a woman called Anna who's living in London, and her mum's died, her marriage is breaking down, she's feeling a little bit lost. She's going through her mum's belongings and she finds some documents about her dad and her dad is African, and there is some documents about him being involved in like racial politics in the 1970s, I think, in Britain, and also about his return to Africa, and perhaps that he might have links to being either an African dignitary or being a local dictator. She's not sure. So she goes to Africa, I think, to see if her dad is still alive, and if he is, to find out about her roots and who her dad is, which sounds really good. The third one is a book set in Jamaica or on another island, and this one was a bit of a struggle. I think the only book that I can find is one that I've had for absolutely ages, so I really do need to read it, and it starts in Barbados, but I'm not sure if it actually stays there. So this is Washington Black by Essie Edugyan, and I have, like I said, had it since it was released in hardback. So this is about 2 English brothers taking the helm of a Barbados sugar plantation. Washington Black is an 11-year-old field slave, and he finds himself selected as a personal servant to one of these men. To his surprise, the eccentric Christopher Wilde is a naturalist, explorer, inventor and abolitionist, and he wants Washington to help him create the perfect aerial machine. He's soon plunged into mortal danger, and they go on to a life altering journey. From the fields of Barbados to the icy waters of the Canadian Arctic, to London, to Morocco, it teems with all the strangeness and mystery of life. So we are starting off in Barbados, but we're obviously not staying there. This is the closest I could get for that prompt. And then the final prompt is centering a tight group of friends or unlikely allies. So for this one, I think it's more like a tight couple of friends rather than a tight group of friends. This is a book that my lovely friend Karen from Roving Reader bought me, and I haven't read it yet, which I feel really bad about. And this is The Parker Inheritance by Varian Johnson. So this is about a young girl called Candice, and she finds an old letter that is addressed to her grandmother, and she discovers a story about a young woman and an injustice that happened many decades ago. And there's a mystery and a fortune that awaits for whoever solves the puzzle. And so she is there's a boy who lives across the street called Brandon. He's quite quiet, and she basically enlists his help to try and decipher the clues of what could happen and try and fulfill the letter's promise. So Karen said this was a really brilliant book. So they are the things that I am planning to read for February. So none of them are huge books, and I'm hopeful I'll be able to read all those. This month my reading's been kind of slow because I was reading Immune for the last 2 weeks, which I've now finished. But because that was a sort of science book, it does take sort of brain power, and so I wasn't reading masses alongside that. And then before that, I did a buddy read of a D.H. Lawrence book with Joe, and that was also one that took quite a lot of concentration. So my reading hasn't been super fast for January. So I'm hopeful. I'm looking forward to having some sort of shorter and books that I've had. All of these are from my TBR, which is really, really lovely because they're all like ones that I really want to read. I love reading books from my TBR, and obviously it gets my numbers down as well, which is also good. So tell me if you're taking part in Blackathon. Tell me about your reading choices for the month of February, and I hope you have a lovely week, and I will speak to you all soon. Bye.